Hello and welcome to Aviation Careers Podcast. My name is Carl Valeri. Since hiring is on an uptick, and many of you that are gone through our coaching are actually getting ready for airline training because this is when it's happening, I decided I'm going to put together a 2025 version of how to successfully complete your airline pilot training in 2025. I'm an airline pilot, a captain on Airbus A320 and 321. I'm also an instructor, a pilot instructor, and I've actually been through 4 initial trainings at the airlines, and I do a lot of initial training for pilots coming through the airline that I work for. So what I'm going to do today is take all those things that I've seen that help people get through their training and put it into like a list here so that you can follow this. I've had many years of helping people move forward in their careers. One thing that I love to do is help them when they're in the simulator, and I absolutely love doing that. And these are the things that I think will help you move through your training and have successful training in 2025 when you go to your airline pilot training. If you have any questions about any of this, feedback at aviationcareerspodcast.com. If you have any feedback, like if there's another suggestion you'd like to put into this list, let me know, because there's maybe something that you feel may have been left out, so I'd love to hear that. Anyway, let's start with the number one thing that you should do to have successful training at your airline, and that is making sure that you memorize all your memory items and limitations. Before you go to training, most airlines will send you a list of the limitations and the memory items. Now, what are those? Limitations are limitations on the airplane, obvious things like a windshield wiper speed, like say you can't use it above a certain speed, like 180 knots or something like that. Also, a landing gear speeds. Maybe you need to know those things. Also, things like fuel. You may need to know fuel capacity, and you may need to know when you can start your APU in the air, at what altitude. What altitude can you put the flaps down? Those are the things I'm talking about as limitations. Memory items, those are the items that are like an immediate action type of an item where you need to know those, like if you're in an emergency. For instance, if you're engine out and you're flying a turboprop, what are certain things you need to do? Do you need to get the condition levers first forward? Do you need to put, like, if you're in a piston aircraft, the mixture rich? Remember, a lot of these airlines are still, some of the airlines, I should say, are still using some piston aircraft. So those are the things that you need to do. Memory items like engine fire, memory items like for emergency descent, those are the type of things. This is one thing I can't stress enough. Make sure you know your memory items and limitations before you get to training, especially if they sent them to you. And the reason being is that's going to take a lot of your time up. And what you need to do is concentrate on the training while you're in the training department and not on the memory items and limitations. So number one, memory items and limitations. Make sure you have those down pat before you get to training. Number 2, study and be prepared. Study and be prepared. This is something that has really been a challenge for me personally, is there's just too many failures due to lack of studying. And you have a direct effect on this to change this. And make sure that if you're going into training and they give you a study guide, you study as much as you can beforehand. Remember, memory items, limitations, but the things that they tell you to study, because when you have an oral exam, say for the airplane that you're in, you need to know the systems. You need to know what it is they want you to know for that oral exam. Maybe it's an operational or oral exam, that type of thing. But this is something that I've seen happen too much, is that there's just too many failures due to the lack of studying. I think now that things are getting a little more competitive in the environment, we're not seeing it as much. But before, we saw a lot more failures, and I saw a lot more people that I actually helped through my coaching that have failed training because of the fact that they just really didn't study enough. So make sure you study and you're prepared. So that's number 2, study and be prepared for your airline training. The number 3, make sure you prepare your friends and family for your training. Now, this seems a little bit odd, but remind them that airline training is like going through basic training for the military without all the push-ups, of course. But it's really very similar because as they say, you're drinking through a fire hose when you're going through training. There's so much information being thrown at you that you really can't have any distractions out there. So make sure you brief your friends and your family that this isn't like going to, a college course online or something like that. This is something that's going to take all of your attention and a lot of your time, because many training programs, you're going to be in there for like 12 hours a day. So make sure you prepare your friends and your family that you're going into this training environment, say it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it may be, and that you need to concentrate on your studies, and that's it. Just concentrate on studies. If you have children, maybe get a family or put in place somebody or that can help you with the children while the spouse is over going through airline training. So make sure you prepare your friends and family for airline training. Number 4 is get sleep. Sleep is really important. There's been a lot of studies on how important sleep is for your cognitive ability. And of course, we have a lot of rules at the airlines for sleep, but it really is important for many other reasons, for your health, etc. But the one thing I see a lot of people not do is they wind up not sleeping, and there's a couple reasons for that. It may be because of the fact that they're nervous. Some people use sleep aids. Some people use alcohol to get themselves to sleep at night. Some of those things are really not good, say, for a good night's sleep when you're trying to prepare for an exam the next day. So maybe you should look at that. Look at how your sleep patterns are and try some way to get better sleep. There's actually some really good books out there on how to get better sleep, how to clear your mind. One of the things that will actually help you so you don't worry at night as much is actually be prepared, like I said, and study your memory items and limitations before you get there. It actually helped me sleep more. By the way, I'm guilty of this. One of the airlines I went to, I didn't have my memory items and limitations down pat like I should have. Oh man, that was rough. And it did cause me to not sleep at night because I had to stay up at night to study those memory items and limitations. Plus, I had to study for the lesson for the next day. So make sure you do everything you can to get as much sleep as possible. The other part of this is, and this goes along with sleep, number 5, stay healthy. Stay as healthy as you can by sleeping, eating right, exercising, and trying to do as much as you can to stay away from stressing your body and try to stay away from sick people as much as you can, right? Sometimes we don't know. I just coughed, as you can tell. You don't know. Maybe I do have a cold. But that's the thing. If you're around people that are sick, you have a tendency to get sick also. By the way, in the training environment, we see a huge uptick in people getting sick because when they first come through, they're very, very nervous. I know what I try to do is I try to really calm people down and make an environment for them that's really open, and it's an environment where they can actually be ready to learn. Because sometimes if you're nervous, you're not going to really be able to learn as much. And also, there's a lot of studies, of course, done that your body reacts differently when you're nervous and also aren't getting sleep. So that's part of that whole staying healthy during this whole process. Also, if you aren't healthy, start thinking about maybe putting off training. But make sure that you bring it up to somebody right away. If you are sick, that you can't move forward. If you are really sick, do not go into a simulator. Do not go into a written exam or an oral exam or a flight test if you are sick. That is so important. So stay healthy. Get healthy if you're not. So stay healthy is number 5. Number 6, and this is key. I know that we love to have everything laid out in front of us, but number 6 is be flexible. Be flexible when you go to training. Sometimes simulators break, schedules change, instructors get sick, and you have maintenance on, say, an item within the building. The building you're in maybe loses power. Maybe there's a storm. Maybe there's a snowstorm or a hurricane or something moves through the training center. Those are the things you have to be prepared for and be flexible. So make sure that you tell your family, okay, we're doing this for 6 weeks, but there is that possibility it might go longer than that. So try to be as flexible as possible and be ready. Be ready for changes because they almost always happen when you're in training. So number 6, be flexible. Number 7 is really important to ask for help if needed. So number 7, to have successful training at an airline as a pilot, you need to ask for help. This is true anywhere. If you've ever been in an accelerated type of program, the people that a lot of times don't make it through are the ones that don't raise their hand and say, hey, listen, I need help. Make sure that you ask for help. If you're having problems and you're trying to go through training, make sure you call them and say, hey, listen, I need help and I need an extra lesson or something like that. And I'll tell you why this is important. A lot of people are afraid to do that because they think it looks bad on your training record. Well, if they have to customize your syllabus or whatever, that's much better than a failure of a check ride. So look at it that way. At least you don't have a failure of a check ride. But definitely ask for help when needed. And that help, it may not necessarily be from your instructors. Maybe it's from your peer set, and you get together and you collectively talk about, this next lesson coming up. So make sure you do that. Make sure you ask for help if needed. Go out there and get into study groups and that type of thing. If you find that there is a study group, jump in and do that. A lot of times the airlines suggest that you have a study group. And by the way, you don't always have to have a study group. It is good. But if you can't participate, you can't participate for some reason. Say you're traveling back and forth to training every day. But still, if you have a problem, make sure you ask for help. And it could be part of one of those study groups or from the instructors. Number 8. It's better to extend your training than fail a check ride. The check ride is reportable to the FAA. It's better to extend your training. So, for instance, there's many reasons you might do that. Like I said, if you need help and you can't move forward, then obviously, tell them you can't do your check ride. If you don't feel you're ready for that check ride, don't do the check ride. Many of you have been through, again, some of these accelerated programs where you feel like you were pushed into doing the check ride, and sure enough, you get a bunch of failures, and that doesn't help you, especially later on in your career. And the one thing, too, I want to stress is that it's good to extend that because you may someday want to go into training or you want to go in management at the airline. And this is something that they'll look at is how many failures you have at that airline, or especially the FAA check ride failures. Say you want to do work after the airline, go somewhere else. So make sure you try as hard as you can not to have too many failures. One way to do that is just to extend your training and say, hey, listen, I can't do my check ride. I'm not ready. And that's something I really would, it'd be very helpful for you to do. And it's sad when I see people come to us for the coaching and they say, hey, listen, I passed this check ride. I knew I shouldn't have taken the check ride. So make sure, if you listen to those people who fail those check rides, make sure that you extend your training if needed. So it's better not to fail the check ride. Number 9 is keep studying. What does this mean? There's a lot of studying that's going on already, but say you have some breaks in your training. Say you feel like you're well ahead of the group or well ahead of the training. Sometimes that'll happen. You're like, man, I got this. This thing, this system, whatever I'm working on, I know this really well. Let me kind of look forward a little bit and maybe keep studying. Don't get too far forward, too ahead of yourself. But if you feel like you need to be challenged, then go ahead and challenge yourself. If you're working on a system, you're working on a hydraulic system, and there's something in that hydraulic system that they tell you don't really need to know, but you want to delve a little bit deeper for your own knowledge that helps you understand it, then keep studying. Keep studying no matter what, because you're in that mode of studying. Keep the brain going. So if you have a break in your training, if you're well ahead in your training, don't stop studying. Just keep studying. So that's number 9, keep studying. So number 10, it's kind of along the same lines of this, is that if you get a long break between training events, ask for more training. If you have, a couple days, maybe not, but if you have a couple of months, I know that I've had that happen in my training, where I had like a 6-month break between my training because I was assigned another project, and then I had to go do a check ride. Well, you know what? You might want to get into a simulator. You might want to do a little bit of training before that check ride, especially if you've been out of training for a long time. So make sure if you go away for a long break and between these training events that you ask for more training. So make sure you ask for more training if you have a long break. Sometimes that can be difficult, but just tell them, hey, you need a warm-up. A lot of people call it a warm-up session. So just ask them if you could do a warm-up session. Number 11, don't try to be the ace of the base. Don't try to be the best pilot in the base. Don't try it as hard as you can to be number 1 pilot there. Try to compete against yourself. When you go to a training, there is so many other good pilots out there. You're being hired by this airline because there's a lot of people competing for those same jobs. So a lot of times you're amongst your peer set, and some people, they may have more skills than you in certain areas. So try not to be the ace of the base. Just try to do the best you can with what you have moving forward. I see this, the reason I'm mentioning this is sometimes we get into this kind of a competition, whereas we should be a little more collaborative and try to help each other. That rising tide, raises all boats. So in this collaborative environment, if you notice, I haven't talked about group sessions because they're going to tell you, make sure you break off in group sessions. And I think they can be good and bad in certain instances, where they can, as long as they're a good group session, I highly recommend it. Get in there, get in study groups, talk to other people. But don't try too hard to be the ace of the base, because I'm telling you what's going to happen. If you're in a room full of people and you argue every question because you want to be right, those people aren't going to want to study with you anymore. So that's kind of what I mean by don't try to be the ace of the base. So that's really, really important. Number 12, make sure you do some contingency planning. Before going in, like with any flight plan, before taking off, you have contingency planning. If you can't make it to your destination, then you need to have some type of planning. So what if you get sick? Have some contingency planning. Before you go in, say, hey, listen, if I get sick and I'm this sick, I'm going to do this, and talk to my family and talk to those other people in my local group. Like, what am I going to do? I'll give you, and God forbid this ever happens to you, but, I had a sim partner whose father had a heart attack. This is going back decades. And it was like, we didn't really have a plan in place for that. But in the back of your mind, you should say, hey, what am I going to do? If that happens, am I going to leave, or am I going to say to myself, can I get through this training event? Interestingly, in that instance, by the way, the person found out about the father and the heart attack the day of his check ride. His dad actually was cognizant enough to say, hey, listen, finish your check ride. And I wound up being a sim partner during that check ride. He passed. It was great. But in this whole scenario, if you can play out in your head, what would I do? Obviously, if he was so sick and he needed his son to be there, then he would have run home. But his father said, listen, don't come home right now. Another thing, too, is when you do have something like that, remember who to call in your training environment as far as contingency planning. Who do you call? Who's your supervisor in case something goes wrong at home? Call them up, and obviously you have the instructor. The instructor will then escalate it. And I'll tell you what, the airline will get you home. If you have a family member that's sick, you will be home. And so that's one good thing about these. We're all one big happy family here. And if you are going on another airline and you tell the captain you're trying to get in the jump seat, hey, my dad just had a heart attack, family's sick, I'm just trying to get home, man, they'll get you there. They will get you there. I've had it happen with myself, and they've definitely gotten me there. And it's an incredible group of people, I'd have to say. The airline pilots are just wonderful folks. And the people that are in the training department are wonderful folks because they want to see you succeed. Along with the contingency planning, make sure that you have planning for a family member. If a family member gets sick, say going into this, that an event might happen. Maybe somebody is sick in your family. Maybe somebody's about to have a child, a baby. So those kind of things, just up front say, hey, listen, if my wife has a baby, I'm heading out the door. I just want you to know this and have in place some ideas as to how you're going to get there. And what do I mean by that? Make sure you have a plan as to how you would commute home. If you live in Knoxville, Tennessee, and you're doing your training in Salt Lake City, Utah, there may not be a direct flight. Maybe there is, but figure out how you would get home and kind of do those things in your head. So that's the kind of contingency planning I want you to do, is make sure that you have a plan in place as much as you can. You can't plan for everything, but try as hard as you can to have contingency planning in place. One other thing I want to mention is that, before you go to training in general, I know I've given you 12 different things, and I've talked about, studying, having memory items and limitations. One thing I want you to know is that it is going to be difficult, but you've done other difficult things in your life. So try to keep a positive attitude through this. You became a private, an instrument pilot, commercial. You got your multi. You may have gotten your instructor's certificate. You've made it through training. Maybe you were with another regional. You did some corporate training, etc. Make sure that you have this positive attitude going in there, showing your past actual successes and put those in your brain. Some of us too, psychologically, may actually look at the past failures. Don't do that. Try to put those in behind you. You will make it through this, successfully make it through this. Go through some of these things that I talked about, these 12 different things as far as, trying to pass, or passing, I should say, your airline training, because all these things that are instituted, I think, help so many people. And I want to see you succeed. And if you ever have questions about this and you want to, ask me personally, feedback at aviationcareerspodcast.com. Of course, if you want to actually get help through our coaching, we have both one-on-one coaching and also group coaching. The group coaching sessions are terrific. We can run questions back and forth with other people. If you're going through training, there's other people in the group coaching that have been through training, and they can kind of help you out and encourage you. So I encourage you to check that out, aviationcareerspodcast.com/coaching. And also, if you're thinking of actually going out there and maybe going to an airline and you're not there yet, you want to see what it's like, there's other things you can do. You can go to some of these, an ATP course. It's kind of expensive. So another way to do that is go and get yourself a scholarship. We have that scholarships guide at aviationcareerspodcast.com/scholarships. And in that guide, we have some actual, courses on getting your ATP for free, and also getting your type rating for free, like your Airbus and that type of thing. And in preparing for all these things, just make sure that when you actually go out and use these different study guides and you're out there preparing, remember that these are generic. They're not specifically for your airline. So make sure you study the one for your airline specifically. But also, if you're looking for one of those scholarships guides for free, you can get one through our sponsor, and that's Stratus Financial at stratus.finance. And those folks help people get through all different levels of training, whether it's through your type rating or your private instrument and commercial. And you can get a scholarships guide for free using that coupon code STRATUS. But most importantly, what I want you to do today is this. I've gone through this whole list of 12 things. There's some things I've actually omitted and put in there. Things like people are going to ask me, why didn't you talk about that whole, doing the group type of learning, that type of thing, study groups. They're going to mention that in training. Didn't really need to talk about that. They stress that everywhere you go. That's part of that whole thing. If you need help to reach out, you may need to reach out to your study group. But these are the big things that I've seen. And, I've been instructing for many decades. I've been doing the airline instructing for quite some time. And I've been through 4 airlines myself and also help a lot of people get through training. These are the things hopefully you'll institute. But make sure you do this for me today. Make sure you look at some of these things and see how you can actually adjust your training right now. Maybe use some of these tools. And if you're somebody who's thinking this is a kind of a daunting task, just remember that all you need to do is just take one small step every day to move forward in your career and in your life. And you know what? I think, and I know that you'll get there sooner than you think. It could be just listening to a podcast, looking up a YouTube video about the training that's going on at that airline, getting the gouge on the internet, and of course being careful that's the right gouge, or it could be just listening to a podcast. Whatever it is, do this for me. Take one step today to move forward in your career and in your life, and I know you will get there sooner than you think. Well, we'll talk to you next episode. Safe flying out there.